Happy Easter, and if we continue our spring training theme, happy opening day. And as baseball players don't forget all the good things they did in spring training to get ready for the season, we as followers of Christ do not let go of the good habits, hopefully, that we have formed over the last 40 days. We just hopefully enhance them. I see the spiritual life kind of building like this, little by little, rather than, sometimes we do this. And so it's not a white knuckling for 40 days and then letting go. It's a slow build, conforming our lives to Christ. So the three things I want to talk about today are the problem, the solution, and the response. So what's the problem? If I had to say one word, the problem is despair. Several years ago, when Pope Benedict XVI was our Holy Father, he said this: "A spiritual desert is spreading, an interior emptiness, an unnamed fear, a quiet sense of despair." So if we look at our own hearts, or maybe our own families, or people that we know, we probably can relate to this, that there is this sense of interior emptiness, an unnamed fear, and a quiet sense of despair. This is spreading throughout the world. I don't know if you've read the book, The Anxious Generation, but if you haven't, I highly encourage you to read it. The basis of the book is that with social media and cell phones becoming predominant, we're more connected than ever, but with that has come an increase in anxiety, an increase in depression, and an increase in suicidal ideation. And it's a spike, and it correlates directly to the onset of social media. And so what is that? It's this sense of comparing leads to despairing, I believe. We're always trying to compare our lives to other people rather than to focus on God. And we become attached to the things of this world instead of becoming detached and attaching ourselves to Christ. So what does this look like, practically speaking? So if we think that this world is the end, and this is why Easter is so important, Christ is showing us that this life, this world is not the end. And so if we live this life as if it were the end, what would happen? Okay, the stock market crashes a little bit, and I'm not making any political statements here, but what happened in your heart when the stock market dove for a little bit? Was there panic? Maybe your team doesn't win the Super Bowl or the World Series, or maybe you don't get the promotion that you expected. Do you have a sense of peace in the midst of that, or do you find yourself with despair and anxiety? The more we attach ourselves to the things of this world, the more despair and anxiety we are going to find, because the world and everything in it is deteriorating. The only thing that lasts is our faith and our belief in God, and the relationships that we form, God willing, will be with us in heaven. I'm not saying I want the stock market to crash. I want what's best for you, but we need to realize this life is not the end. So what's the solution? Number two, it's obviously Christ. Jesus and the resurrection is really the answer to every human ill. No matter how difficult things get, even death itself, we have hope amidst despair. We are an Alleluia people that believe that, and that's what the disciples believe too, right? You can take my life. I'm willing to give my life for Christ. You can take my life, but I know that there's a better reward waiting for me in heaven. But if I don't have that faith in the resurrection, and I'm hanging on to this world, we live life very differently. So think about this, what Jesus did from the cross. Our God took on flesh, lived our life, walked our talk, died our death. The most excruciating pain that you can imagine. They saved the cross, crucifixion, for the worst criminals. And we've heard the word excruciating. It literally means ex cruce, from the cross. It's what Jesus experienced on that cross. And then he rose from the dead 3 days later. Why do we believe this? For me, the most convincing evidence is what happened to his followers. The day Jesus was crucified, They scattered, they cowered in the upper room, afraid we're going to be next. And when they saw him alive 3 days later, when they touched the nail marks, when they saw him eating fish to say, I'm not a ghost, I've risen body and soul, they went from being afraid to going out and preaching boldly to the point they all died a martyr's death, except St. John. He's the only one that died of natural causes, probably because he was taking care of Mary. He was in charge of taking care of the Blessed Mother. Another reason maybe to believe, maybe you're into science and you think faith and science don't go together, but I don't know if you've ever studied the Shroud of Turin. Today we hear in this gospel, and it's interesting, this is from St. John writing the gospel. So Peter gets news from Mary Magdalene that the tomb is empty. And it says Peter and the disciple that Jesus loved, and that's John, he's writing it about himself, they go racing to the tomb. Who gets there first? John, he's younger. And John, in deference to Peter, lets Peter go in first, and then John goes in, and they see the burial cloths there. If somebody stole Jesus's body, they would not have stolen, or they would have taken everything. But the burial cloth of his head was folded up nicely on the side. And it says St. John saw and believed. I don't know if you've studied the Shroud of Turin, but scientifically they say that it is a photographic negative of a person who was crucified. They put coins over his eyes, and on the coins it says Pontius Pilate, and they found pollen and plants on the shroud that only come from the area of Jerusalem. There's a lot more evidence there to say that this very well could be the burial cloth of Jesus. And the energy that it took to put that photographic negative on the shroud is something beyond human capacity. And it says it came from inside the body out onto the shroud to make that image. Encourage you to study that. And then the last point is, if the problem is despair and the solution is Jesus and the hope of the resurrection, then how do we respond to that? Jesus invites us to be people of faith. He invites us to detach ourselves of this world, which doesn't mean, we as Catholics believe we live in the world, but not of the world. So you can still have a wonderful job, you can make, money, whatever you want, but if you live unattached to those things, you will find greater peace. My experience is, as a former baseball player, my God was baseball. And so when baseball went well, things were great. When baseball didn't go well, which was more than half the time, I was down here, wild roller coaster. And that happens in all forms of life. I was too attached to that game. And when I finally put more emphasis and realized, I don't even remember who won the World Series a couple years ago. I don't remember what the stock market was a few years ago. As my dad said, we can't take any of these things with us. To focus on and keep our eyes on Christ and the resurrection. I guarantee you, if you spend as much time focused on the things of faith as we do the things of this world, you're going to find peace. You're going to find joy. You're going to find you bounce back from things that normally would have taken you way off track. So reflect on those things this week. Think of the problem, this despair, this attachment to the things of this world, the things that are falling apart. The solution is Jesus and the hope of the resurrection, and he invites us to put our faith in him. I'll close with this from a quote from my favorite saint, Pope St. John Paul II. He said, "Do not abandon yourselves to despair. We are the Easter people, and Alleluia is our song."